Now, when it comes down to your HR department, or some people may call it people operations, or whatever name that they have for it, it's the team that works in human resources, where their responsibility, whether it's recruiting, whether it is, I guess you say the employee development and education, and whatever the department is, a couple of the financial metrics that that department needs to understand are going to be, first is your revenue. They need to understand the size of the business, because when they're talking to different candidates, or they're trying to attract people to come work at the company, that's a very big thing, is the size of the company. And in the business realm, a lot of times it's referred to by revenue count. So if you're a finance person, this is something you want to communicate to your HR department, or to make sure that you help them understand, is the size of the company in terms of revenue. Now, they're already going to know the size of the company in terms of headcount. So that is something that you can help them with, is the revenue side. Now, the other thing that you want them to, or you want to help them understand, is going to be the revenue growth, because that becomes a very important part when it comes to recruiting, because people want to know that they're working for a company that's growing. They want to know that, hey, they're working with a business that has a future, that has a potential, that has a good trend. Because as they begin to understand what that growth looks like, then they can decide whether or not they want to come work for that company. And then another very important area, that is because the HR team should be asking the question of, okay, if we're growing by X%, how many new employees do we need? Like, how many people do we need to have on board to support that type of growth? Because as you start to grow your business, what you'll realize is that, you do need people to sustain, or you need people to support the growth that your business is having. So the HR department needs to understand that. And then another very important one that HR really, really should understand, or that finance should be communicating to HR, is revenue per head count. Now, this is a very important one, because this helps your business not get too far out of bounds when it comes down to growth. Because when you are in a growth phase, a very, very common thing that businesses do a lot is they just start hiring, because they're like, hey, we got to do this, we got to do this project, we got to do this project, and they just start hiring. Now, when you're in the growth phase, it is very, very tempting to just go hire tons of people, which, if you're not being mindful of it, what it's doing is adding a ton of cost on your business. And as you're adding that cost on your business, you have to ask yourself, hey, you know what? Do we have the revenue flowing through the business to support this added cost? Because I know we want to get these projects done. But when we look at it, we have to say, okay, all right, what is the average revenue per head count? Because if we're growing our head count substantially faster than we are growing our revenue, we could be setting ourselves up for some serious, serious trouble ahead. Because, when you start growing your head count really, really fast, what tends to happen is, or let me say not tends to, what the reality is you are committing to a certain level of cost. Now, a lot of things could happen between when you bring those people on and when you actually start seeing the revenue. Because what I have seen with some companies is they start bringing on a lot of employees, because they're like, hey, we're growing and we're preparing for growth. And then what they start doing is they start hitting little bumps in the road. And the thing is, if you hit enough bumps in the road, and let's say if you don't hit that revenue target, the challenge that you put yourself into is that you've already hired all these people and you're not hitting your revenue. So you've already added the cost to the business and you're not hitting your revenue. So you want to make sure you're keeping an eye on that. Like, what is your average sales or your average revenue per head count? And you want to monitor that to make sure you're giving yourself kind of that check to say, hey, let me make sure we are not growing our head count costs faster than we are growing the actual size of the business, because they should go hand in hand. I mean, as you grow your business, you will need more support. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to grow the cost of your business significantly faster than you are growing the revenue of your business, because that will not play out well for you in the long term. Because that is where companies have to then have uncomfortable conversations about, hey, unfortunately, based on the things that are going on, we now have to do either downsizing, or we now have to find, some other ways of cutting costs, whether that be furloughs or whatever the case is. And it doesn't do well for the morale of your team. So you want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on those type of metrics: your revenue, just your pure size of your business, your revenue growth, and your growth projections. And then you also want to keep an eye on your revenue per head count to make sure you are not growing the cost side of your business significantly faster than you are growing your revenue.